Well, I think Springsteen had it right, because I want to start a little fire today, and maybe I can make a little bit of a spark. Let's begin with this beautiful girl. Isn't she cute? She's so sweet and innocent. I met her in Kathmandu. Tourist meets local, Hindu temple, and I was just so struck by her. She didn't speak English, I don't speak Nepali, but we took a lot of pictures, and I've come to see her as the metaphor, as the symbol for our nonprofit sector. Innocent, at the temple, making an offering, no making waves, let's not offend anybody, let's be sweet, gentle, and hope they give us good things. We'll come back to her at the end. Okay, it's a few months later now, back home, and I'm at a United Way fundraising breakfast. You've all been to these kind of things, I'm sure. And soon enough, it's time for the ask. This morning, the ask is being made by the current board chair of the United Way, a local business leader. I still hear him. Won't you please open up your hearts and wallets to support our cause of early childhood education? Well, of course, I made my donation, and they did pretty well. I don't know, they made the right amount of thousands of dollars. Not bad for a mid-sized city in Arizona. But wait a second. That was the same guy who, along with other local business cronies, not 3-4 weeks before, was actively campaigning, raising over $500,000 to defeat an early childhood education measure that was going to be on the ballot upcoming. What hypocrisy. What a double standard. And honestly, as I told someone sitting at my table, I was ashamed that I didn't have the guts to walk out. Let's talk a little bit more about that early childhood education ballot measure. Strong Start Tucson began really when one of our board members at our nonprofit, who's actually here with us today, Bill asked a very provocative and transformational question. He said, what could we do to secure funding for early childhood education in our community? Because he knew that the research is beyond clear. The best way to prevent poverty, the best way to economic self-sufficiency is to ensure that less than half, as is the case in America, that all kids can enter school ready to learn and be successful. He knew that kindergarten teachers, in the first month of school, with frightening accuracy at the start of the semester, can predict which of their new 5-year-olds are at high risk of dropping out of high school, never graduating, getting arrested, having substance abuse problems, and never really being economically self-sufficient adults. Those predictions, tragically, can be made. The die is cast way too early. He asked, how are we going to fund preschool, which so few kids get at high quality in our community? And out of that grew a community initiative which had great involvement of the nonprofit sector. And the goal was to put on the ballot, and we did it. We collected the signatures. We funded a campaign, and had this passed, a modest sales tax increase would have occurred, and that would have funded needs-based preschool for all. Noble goal, great idea, and a month before the election, we were polling at a near tie. That was when the dark money, the no-tax Koch brothers, Americans for Prosperity money flowed in, joined the aforementioned $500,000 I talked about, and a pretty vicious and hateful campaign of mailers and TV and radio ensured the fate of this initiative. Now, lesson learned. It was very difficult, painful, and educational for a nonprofit CEO to be involved in this campaign. And a fellow organization that was a partner, a literacy organization, they had a donation pulled by a corporate sponsor as punishment for daring to support an early childhood education. But something changed, something snapped in me, and I haven't been the same since. And I've come to realize there's something terribly wrong with our sector. Okay, we've got to do business very differently. Let's think about this for a moment. Consider a donor who gives $10,000 to an organization. He or she gets great kudos, a leader in the field, a philanthropist. But what if that same person is giving 10 times that, $100,000 or more, to elect candidates whose votes and actions do such harm to our cause and our mission? There's something that needs to be called out about this truth. We should actually be doing net impact analyses. That scale will help you see that that person who's a pillar of your community in the current model, if truth be told, is doing $90,000 of net harm to our causes, our client, and our mission. And that's not really talked about enough because we're so afraid. We're so afraid of rocking the boat or, God forbid, offending this big philanthropist. And I've come to realize that we've got to make a change. Let me give you another example. I was at a conference not that long ago, and I heard a lovely presentation from some conservative foundations and philanthropies that had raised several $million over a period of time, and they were working on infant mortality, childhood obesity, maternal health, diabetes. Really lovely stuff. Except, wait a second. Here's a state without Medicaid expansion, and the root cause is lack of health insurance. And yes, it's lovely that the women and children who are benefiting from the services, don't get me wrong, I'm not that cynical, but there's something that I just couldn't stomach anymore about how they could tolerate the status quo and sort of feel really good about helping the poor, needy African-American women in the poorest zip codes with their project, but the reality, the root cause, was not really talked about. And so the problem is that we are stuck at the kids' table. And I am sick and tired of being at the kids' table. Think about this. Our sector, we hear in the national imperatives, employs over the same amount of people as the entire airline industry. But we have nowhere near the clout, influence, or power of even one small little Allegiant Airlines. Why? Well, part of it is because we're so fragmented and independent. That's true. But the other part of this problem is that we are living in fear. The role of the CEO of a nonprofit, and more importantly, the way nonprofit organizations function, has to change if we're ever really going to move the needle. If we really want a fair and equitable society, and our alliance is doing great stuff at the national level, but now it's our turn at the individual organization level. If we really want to address equity, poverty, make some meaningful differences in child welfare indicators, we're going to have to change. We've got to get over being in fear of offending potential donors, especially the kind who love to just help the afflicted and feel good while doing other things that are so harmful. We've got to be able to tell the truth and take stances, because that's the only way that we are going to be able to punch at our true weight. We're punching nowhere near what we should be. Now, I know many agencies can say we're doing fine, and many are, and let's not worry. But this whole notion of fear of being apolitical is got to shift. And I can tell you, we can look at the other side. Okay, I'm on the board of Planned Parenthood of Arizona, and I can tell you that our donations increased dramatically last year. Why? Because we doubled down on advocacy while under siege. We told the truth and we're not afraid, and that brought new donors to the table, and it also increased the amount that others gave who were so pleased to see someone standing up for what's right. Okay, so really the kind of beginning of the end here is, you can say But we got to be apolitical. That's what our board wants. That's what nonprofits are supposed to do. Some don't even know that they're allowed legally to be engaged in advocacy and so on and so forth. But at the end of the day, this idea of being apolitical, how has it really been working out for us lately? And the answer is not well. The answer is not well. We have got to make a little change. And so what I call this change is Nonprofit 2.0. What if we could ensure that all our staff and clients voted? Now, amazingly, in this election that defines our time, less than half of Americans are going to vote in 3 weeks. But be honest, what % of your clients and your staff are going to vote? I bet it's even less than that half. And are we actively working to make that change? And what if, instead of playing defense all the time, what if we could create or advocate for local and statewide initiatives to advance our missions? What if we were at the forefront of leading things? Yes, the Alliance does it for us with the DC Policy Office, and we can wash our hands and feel good and support that. But what if we really were more involved as a sector in advocating for our missions? And then what if we could form new competitions for the Chamber of Commerce? You know, I've been on the Chamber of Commerce and I quit. I just couldn't stomach the inconsistency of what they were fighting and asking and advocating for. We try to fit in. What if we formed our own Chambers of Change or Anti-Poverty Alliance? You guys are more creative than me. We could call them something else. And then, what if, most importantly, we could sit at the grown-up table where we could be involved in writing policies and we could figure out how to spend those precious dollars and design government contracts in a way that made sense versus the way that they tell us to behave because we're just the kids. And then we could revisit our slide. And now the scale would go the other way, and net impact would make sense, and then we could have power and become squirrels. And then, most importantly, we could say goodbye to our beautiful Nepali girl. We wouldn't need her anymore. It would be time for a new symbol. I invite you all, I want you all to help me figure out how we could adopt a new symbol of our sector. Let's become Wonder Woman agencies. It's time to do it now. We keep hearing it's ripe. We keep hearing it's time of change, inflection. We've got to step up and change and have some courage and lose the fear. Thank you.